What a perfect time to discuss state of the franchise with the San Francisco 49ers because there is so much going on. Uh, Things that are going to happen that we don't even know yet. Free agency around the corner. You've got teams like the Jags cost cutting at an extreme rate. And the San Francisco 49ers kind of in that realm. Who are they going to add? Who are they going to subtract? We've already said goodbye to Deebo Samuel via trade. Who is next on the chopping block? We'll talk about all those things coming up here on State of the Franchise. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. Let's get into it all right now. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Mr. Aponte, hope you are doing well, my friend. So much going on around the San Francisco 49ers, but let's hop into, I think, one of the more pertinent topics right now around this team. We saw last night Joey Bosa was released, and we also found out today that Trey Hendrickson is on the trade block. My dream of Max Crosby died about as quickly as it started. So we've heard, I think, from Tim Kawakami, he's talked about many times the San Francisco 49ers being interested in, going after an edge rusher. We know the 49ers need defensive line help. How do you anticipate the 49ers attack that position? Maybe is it trade? Is it signing Joey Bosa? Where do you think that lands?
I think in the range of possibilities, it's far more likely that the 49ers are going to look at Joey Bosa for something that's more of an incentive-laden deal, 1-year deal, kind of just taking money at this point to play with his brother. And when you look at the role that I suspect that he's going to fill as a situational pass rusher, that tracks, right? Like signing Joey Bosa to a huge contract, not smart at all. And it goes against everything that the 49ers have been telling us about getting younger and cost cutting and getting out of these contracts. And unfortunately, the knock on Joey Bosa is he's been injured. Now, if you can spare him and make him into a situational pass rusher, then a 1-year deal where it's incentive laden or vet minimum, I think he would be more inclined to take that to play with his brother as well, too. So and that's just me going off vibe and everything. I don't, have any insider sources, and there's nothing to point to the idea that Joey Bosa wants to take less money. Just kind of hoping right here. With the Trey Hendrickson thing, I just don't see it, Brad. And here's why I don't. When you look at what it's going to take to get Trey Hendrickson, it's going to cost you valuable draft capital, which the 49ers are coveting right now when it comes to getting younger and resetting their cap situation. And then let's not forget, Trey Hendrickson's not coming over here without getting a huge mega deal. Not an extension, a mega deal. Because Trey Hendrickson is one of the top 5 pass rushers in the league. So he's coming over here with the idea of you're sending away draft capital, 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick, something like that. Very valuable, most likely a top 100 pick. And then you have to double down and pay Trey Hendrickson. So this one just doesn't jive in my mind with the way that the 49ers have kind of been moving, right? Joey Bosa on a 1-year incentive-laden deal makes sense. And that's what it should be. It shouldn't be anything more than that. The idea that the 49ers are going to throw the bag at Joey Bosa spits in the face of what they've been doing in terms of shedding contracts. And then when you think about the Trey Hendrickson thing, not only are you going to have to give up draft capital, you're going to have to sign him to a huge deal, which double spits in the face of what the 49ers are trying to do right now. I love Trey Hendrickson. It's clear that he is an impactful player. He's one of the best in the game, if not the most underrated pass rusher in the NFL the last few years. But I just don't see it, Brad, and I don't see the vision, and I don't see how it gets there at this point when the 49ers are trying to stockpile picks, not give them away, and trying to shed contracts, not add big contracts. When you couple the fact that you're giving away capital and the contract, it makes double no sense, in my opinion.
Well, and two, on top of that, he's 30 years old. I think he'll be 31 in season. He's an older player, although highly productive, very, very productive, especially leading the league in sacks last year. It's a great idea. It's a great thought. It's fun to talk about, kind of like Max Crosby. But I think you're absolutely right. I think trying to not only trade capital, but have to pay, I think it's clear that the 49ers are going in a different direction. The thought of, chips all into the center, just throw money at these players, bring some guys in. It's clearly not the route that they're going. It seems like they're taking a more strategic approach to trying to find players that can be impactful for a more, let's say, cost effective contract amount. So that's why I think, to your point too, Joey Bosa makes more sense. And the fact, I think, is he's probably motivated to play with the San Francisco 49ers and would take less to come play with the 49ers opposed to someone else, maybe even on a 1-year prove it deal. That, because we know he's been dealing with injuries and his production has kind of taken a dip over the last 3 years. So you kind of capitalize on that. You get him at a deal, and then if he wants to play 1 year, maybe 2 years, you sign him to maybe a 2-year deal if you want to like mess around with the cap and kind of spread it around. But it feels like the 49ers could get much, much more creative with a Joey Bosa deal opposed to trying to just swing for the fences and trade for a premier pass rusher. Pretty much, I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah, 100%. And Trey Hendrickson, don't get it twisted. In a perfect world where there's no sort of change in philosophy with the 49ers and their organization and the way they've been kind of moving and trying to get rid of all these contracts and almost trying to move away from these contracts and take it all on the chin in one season. Alexa, turn off. Almost take it on the chin all in one season and try to get it out of the way so you can set yourself up down the line. How do you figure out what is going to help this team moving forward? It's going to be through the draft, and it's going to be with young, impactful talent, right? In a perfect world, Trey Hendrickson is on the opposite side of Nick Bosa, and we roll. And I think that is not a knock on the player. Like, it's not that I don't want Trey Hendrickson here. I'm just going off of how this organization is moving. I think at the combine when John Lynch, everyone freaked out about Brock Purdy and, hey, it couldn't get done. I didn't freak out over that. That's something that's just, in the beginning of it's the infant stages of the negotiation that people freaked out about Christian McCaffrey being only parts of the offseason. I didn't think that he shouldn't even have to do any of the offseason stuff. Just get him ready for training camp and get him ready for the season. The thing that made my ears prick up is, listen, John Lynch said we have to reset and get younger. And it's like, man, that really like pricked my ears up to the point where I'm like, man, the people that we thought were going to go are going to go, but there's going to be people here that we didn't think were going to go that are going to go. So I don't get like how that correlates like with Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's really seeming like Dre Greenlaw is going to be gone in free agency. Talanoa Hufanga going to be gone. Charvarius Ward likely gone. Aaron Banks likely gone. Deebo's already out the door. Who knows who's next? Rumors about Brandon Aiyuk being traded potentially. That's out there. And if that is the case, then it seems like anyone can be had. Do you foresee, like, if you had to pick a 49er right now that is currently on the roster? We know Javon Hargrave, he's going to be a post-June 1st release, so he's pretty much out the door. Who do you think else could be out the door that maybe isn't a name that is highly discussed?
Well, I think when you hear now Mayoko talking about Kyle Juszczyk, that's a name that has to be thrown out there as well too. When you look at the way
could you tell me what he said? I didn't actually come across what he said, but I saw people referencing it. What did he say about?
It was on his pod, and he was talking about cut candidates, and he talked about Yetur Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd, and it sounded like when you go through the tone, the certainty that he kind of had of like, 94 is gone, and so is 44. And again, the Deebo Samuel deal, obviously you trade it and you get the dead cap space taken away right away in 1 year. It's not spread out over years. So
Right.
you have that. And it gives you financial flexibility down the line, right? You obviously don't like to see that number that high, but if you get rid of it in one season, then you're really talking about this reset that they were talking about. And then my thing is you see Deebo go, and now you're talking about Kyle Juszczyk. What's the next step in this offense? What's the next evolution? What's the next, like, right? Because the 49ers are one of 4 or 5 teams that employ a fullback, right? And we understand Kyle Juszczyk's importance into identifying man, being very good with his run fits and his angles. We get all that. But this season, this offense kind of felt like it was stuck in the mud a little bit, right? And obviously Brandon Aiyuk not being there, it kind of exacerbated things because Juwan Jennings was pressed into duty as a number one, as an X, and he did phenomenal, right? But the offense kind of was stuck in neutral. So this season is going to be about how do you fill the Deebo Samuel role? And I've been very vocal about I don't need you to bring in someone with Deebo Samuel's skill set in terms of like I don't want to see any more wide back stuff. I think you trying to duplicate that comes off a bit arrogant, and it also dismisses the fact that Deebo Samuel was a one-of-one talent. And the timing of his skill set with this scheme is something that can't be duplicated. So how do you replace Deebo Samuel? Let's just get back to the drawing board about wide receivers who can get themselves open and run routes. How about that? Like, I understand the advantage that you gained by having Deebo Samuel put defenses on their heels, and they're able to, they were able to do so many things with Deebo. I'm not trying to diminish that, by the way. Thank you, Deebo. I appreciate everything that you did, man. Good luck to you. But let's just get back to drafting wide receivers that can get themselves open, or signing wide receivers that can get themselves open. No more of that trickery. No more of that sort of deception. Guys that can win one-on-one, and we can evolve this offense a little bit more, and more importantly, evolve the drop back passing game, which Brock Purdy is better at than the quarterbacks that have been here before, including Jimmy Garoppolo, who, let's just face it, I don't like talking bad about Jimmy, but relied a lot on those tunnel screens to Deebo Samuel to do the work and everything as well too. Like, Brock's a better downfield passer. So if we're going to turn the keys over to Brock in some form or fashion, whatever the contract extension is, let's get him guys that are going to separate and get themselves open, right? And I think that's what I'm looking at right now. Thank you, Deebo Samuel. Your skill set was one of one. Perfect timing, perfect marriage of the scheme. But let's just get back to wide receivers that can get themselves open and can win one-on-one with route running.
Yeah, no, I hear you 100%. And I wouldn't say that this is like the strongest wide receiver class,
It's
but I
not.
think you're absolutely going to be able to find contributors, like that's for sure. And who knows who will become available on the open market via free agency. But I'm also kind of the same mindset. I think a name that we've heard in 49ers land, replacing Deebo Samuel is Savion Williams. And I kind of agree with you. I don't know if I necessarily need to replace Deebo either, because just like we saw in 2019, remember that when he kind of really exploded onto the scene as a rookie, and then you're going into the combine, and you and I've been at the combine. It was like every single wide receiver was asked, like, do you think you could be Deebo Samuel? And like across the ticker at the combine, finding the next Deebo Samuel. Just like you said, spoiler alert, there's no other Deebo Samuel. Like, he's just such an anomaly at the position when it comes to like his ability to be such a tough runner once the ball is in his hands. And he wasn't the, most locked in, like precise route runner. And it kind of felt like it was just get the ball to Deebo and let Deebo make something happen. Not everyone is like that, and it's hard to duplicate, like you said. So let's actually develop a downfield passing game that is, outside of the structure of the bread and butter concepts that the 49ers run pretty consistently, and take it to another level. And, I'm not a big scheme guy, but in the guys that I do trust who talk about scheme and things like that, that they do talk about his passing game, or Kyle Shanahan's passing game is kind of, I don't think saying elementary is fair, but kind of mid-level downfield passing attack. Maybe trying to expand that, especially with what we saw from the 49ers last year, who clearly wanted to push the ball downfield. So let's take that, let's develop that, and let's get some wide receivers in who can exploit that, get more. I think the 49ers were bottom 5 in the league in 3 wide receiver sets. Like, all right, well,
Yes.
if the 49ers are going to be moving on from Kyle Juszczyk, isn't it time to kind of evolve into the modern day passing game, 3 wide receiver sets? You got Kittle, who you can flex out, flex in, do all those different types of things. I agree. Like, take it to the next level, and it would be interesting. If that is the case, though, with the question of Brandon Aiyuk, we don't know if he will even be ready to go week 1.
I doubt it.
Do you think they could draft a wide receiver at 11? I mean, I think both you and I were on the same page of, we didn't think they would draft a wide receiver in the first round at 31 last year. Do you think they would, let's broaden it a little bit. Do you think they would take a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds?
I don't. And here's why. When I look at this wide receiver group, in years past, there's been those top end alpha guys. Like last year was Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, and all those guys are studs, right? Now, this draft is for the receivers in the middle rounds. That's where you're going to find your guys. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Jack Beck. These are the guys that you're going to find later on, right? Yeah. So if I was guessing, I would say if at 11, Mason Graham is there, the 49ers don't even balk at the idea. They run the card up.
They're
right. Like they sprint the card right up because he is a defensive tackle that they've been chasing since DeForest Buckner left. And I wrote about it today on Niners Nation. The way that they've been going about replacing DeForest Buckner has been with players who are either or, meaning Malik Collins is a good pass rusher, but he's bad in run defense. Javon Hargrave, good pass rusher, bad in run defense. Jordan Elliott, run defender, not a pass rusher. So you've got all these guys that are either or, but you've been chasing the guy that doesn't get off the field for any down, and that's Mason Graham. Now, I'm going to piss a lot of people off with this one. My dream pick at number 11 is Will Johnson from Michigan, and I'm standing on business all the way until we get to the draft. I understand, guys. Trenches. You guys want Will Campbell. You guys want Kelvin Banks. You guys want, Mason Graham. You guys want those guys. I understand. Yeah, I understand. And I'm not arguing with you. And again, I still think that the 49ers, if Mason Graham's there, will take him. They will take him. But Will Johnson gives the 49ers a chance to do something with this secondary that would be insane. When you look at him, he looks like Patrick Surtain. Now you get a guy who can play man, zone, off, press, and you can kick in Lenore inside, and you have Renardo Green on the outside, and this secondary will be absolutely clamps. And if your pass rush is suffering, you don't have to worry on your back end. And this is a passing league. How do you slow down the more dynamic wide receivers? You don't slow them down with defensive tackles. And, and look, I see the injury stuff. I spoke to Jordan Reed yesterday of ESPN. He says no medical concerns. He's fine. He'll be at his pro day. He's fine. So, and you know what? Again, I'm telling you that I want him at 11, but I know he's not going to be the pick. Mason Graham will be the pick if he's there. But if you're talking about the second
to 11,
say again,
Howard.
Who's that?
Howard makes it to 11?
Howard
or not Howard? Will
Johnson. Yeah. I get afraid with Atlanta and Jacksonville. Although now with Jacksonville, they're firmly in the wide receiver market, in my opinion. Because now, you trade Christian Kirk to the Texans, you move off of Evan Ingram, you really just have Brian Thomas. So right now, there's a chance that they could be in the wide receiver market. I wouldn't want to pick a wide receiver that early. I like Tet. I think he's a Drake London type of player, but I wouldn't be comfortable with him that early. Atlanta scares me a little bit because Atlanta has needed an edge guy for a long time, and they just continue to jump right over it. Like they're just like, nah, we don't need an edge. We don't need an edge. We don't need an edge, right? But the second round, I feel, and the 49ers have had a good process when you think about it, because last season in the second round, who did they come away with? Renardo Green, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a lineman that they can take in the second round that can supplant in a year or two, whether it's Trent Williams or, Colton McKivitz, right? I think we should all set our watch to left guard being Ben Barch at this point, right? The Drew Dahlman thing is
Center.
what we're really on as center at this point. But I want to ask you this, Brad, because you're the O-line guy. Will Campbell is projecting to be a guard, right? In the NFL to start?
Depends on who you ask.
Right. Okay. So for the most part, people are saying, I think he'll start at guard. Do the 49ers value a guard that early?
Well, I think the question is, regardless of who you're taking, whether it is Will Campbell, I think he's a tackle. I think a lot of people that I trust who evaluate offensive line also believe he's the top tackle. And even with Amond Membo's rise, who I even just took in my mock draft 3.0 at 11, either one of those guys are probably starting at guard next year for the San Francisco 49ers, because Colton McKivitz, barring something that happens to him, he still has 1 year under contract. I don't know if they're in the midst of contract negotiations with him or if they maybe let him seek a trade. I don't know. I think the Colton McKivitz thing is kind of a question that I don't think many people talk about, because he is heading into the final year of his deal. And as you and I have talked about in the past, regardless of what you think of Colton, he outperformed his current contract. He's paid like a swing tackle, but he's a starting right tackle. Mm-hmm. And so I do think quietly there might be some negotiations or potential conversations about what the future holds for Colton. But let's say he's starting next year. Colton is here. He will start. If you're drafting Membo or you're drafting Will Campbell or Banks or whatever offensive lineman you can think of, they're probably starting at guard. And then you probably shift them to tackle once McKivitz leaves or once Trent maybe retires. Because when you look at Will Campbell and you look at Armand Membo, they both have that versatile skill set. They can both play. I think they're both tackles, but I do think they can also play guard. And that's kind of the best of both worlds for the San Francisco 49ers. Get someone who can be an impact now, start now at left guard, replace Banks. And then I think Barch is a potential center target if Dahlman doesn't come in. And then, like we said, once those two guys leave, you kick them out or you just keep them there if you feel comfortable with it. But I don't think you're drafting either one of them to be a guard, but you can plug them into the lineup right away, right? Because I think the ultimate deciding factor is who they pick at 11 has to play, right?
Yeah.
They have to
one way or another.
They can't. We cannot do. Oh, we'll sit them. Yeah, we'll sit them behind, and no, they have to play, and they have to be an impact. So even if they are playing out of position, which again, it's not the best always for offensive line, I think that those two guys are talented enough to be able to go in and out. So that's kind of my thought process on that. Other than that, there really aren't too many natural tackles in this class. This is a really, really weak tackle class, especially when you look at it on the heels of last year's class. It's not one that you want to really be banking on in the second or third round. You might be able to hit on someone, a bit of a sleeper, and those happen every single year, right? But it's definitely not like, oh, we are going to go into this draft just expecting a plug and play tackle in the third round. It can happen, but again, I don't think you can bank on it, right?
And that's the thing, is there's multiple ways to attack this. Do you do it fully in the draft? Do you do it in the draft and free agency? Do you get Mason Graham and then you take somebody else in the second round and sign somebody like Azeez Ojulari? And there's different ways that the 49ers can attack this, right? Like, and it doesn't mean one way or another that it's going to be all or nothing when it comes to this. I think, again, the possibilities are endless, and I think that's what makes this draft so interesting. The only concern I really have is when you have all these options, is you might have too many options and you might be thinking too much about things, right? Like, I almost feel like when it comes to pick 11, that you kind of hope that the pick is easy because all the guys that you would have been considering got taken. So you don't have to
Right.
like go through all three of these options, right? Like, you almost just want to
It's
say,
not like when we're on the clock in Dynasty in like a startup draft and we're like
mm-hmm,
building the roster that we're going to have for years. And you're
mm-hmm,
just like, God, I don't know who to pick. I don't know which
mm-hmm,
one. Should I go
mm-hmm,
wide receiver here? Should I go running back? Maybe this
mm-hmm,
quarterback's kind of eyeing me. And you're just like in this, you just don't know which way to go. And it's
mm-hmm,
kind of an uncomfortable feeling. And the worst part is when you draft the guy that ultimately is the wrong guy and you
mm-hmm.
pass on the one you should have taken.
And how many times have you looked back and said, I understood my thought process right there in that moment, but if I could do that over again, I would, right? And I think to that point, Brad, the 49ers have to hit.
Yes.
This isn't and whatever the plan is, whether it's half in free agency, half in the draft, both halves have to work. One half can't work and the other half, does work, right? Like, it can't be, hey, you hit on the guy in the draft, but the guy that you brought in free agency didn't help at all, or vice versa. And that's a tough spot to be in for any organization. I don't envy the 49ers for having that, because how do you decipher that plan? How do you get to the perfect plan? And I think that's really the kind of conundrum the 49ers are in right now, because this can't be well, they did all right in this draft. No, this has to be we hit a home run here. Like, we've hit a home run. And last year, and let's build off of last year, because last year's
Yeah.
draft was great. You walk away with Pooney, Mustafa, you walk away with Renardo Green, and Pearsall showed something at the end of the year. You feel good about that. If you end up with 4 starters in a draft that you feel real good about, that's a really, really good draft. So you got to build
Right.
on that. But the 49ers can't afford to have a so-so draft. They can't afford to have a kind of good draft. They have to have a great draft. And that's the part that makes this draft so impactful, and everyone is so locked in on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was kind of talking about this last night on live, was basically saying like this is such an important free agency and draft because they basically have to pull 3 to 4 impactful players out of free agency and 3 to 4 impactful players out of the draft who are
Mm-hmm.
going to play next year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's anywhere from 6 to 8 new faces getting a lot of snaps that weren't here last year. And I was asked the question, like, well, do you think, what happened last year and all of that and what's happening this year is going to linger into next year? Are the players like gassed out from like all of this situation mentally? And I'm thinking like, well, if they're bringing in at minimum 6 to 8 new faces on offense and defense that are getting plugged in and playing significant amount of snaps, I don't think so, because you have an injection of new talent. I think the rookies, like I talked to Tariq Owens at the combine or not the combine, at the Super Bowl. And one of the things that we were talking about was like the perception in the locker room, right? Because outside amongst the fan base, and you and I, Jason, we speak to the fans, like you can see how the fans feel in the chat in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And they would tell you the sky is falling. That's not how they felt inside that building. They obviously they have a different perception. There's a different mentality, and they are kind of more in control of the situation than we are. We're just kind of helpless watching from the sideline. So of course it's going to feel more dire, but the way he was saying, he was like, man, inside we had a belief, all the way till the end. Like it almost didn't feel real because we believed so much and it just didn't go our way. But he's like, I don't think we're going to miss a step. I think we're just going to be right back at it. And, just like the vibes in the locker room and everything like that. So I think if you add some new faces, you plug those guys in, I don't think there's going to be any type of hangover or
Mhm.
cloud hanging over their head. It's a new year. They lost the Super Bowl last year. It is what it is. I think they've had enough time to lick their wounds and move on. But to your point, like, this is such a crucial draft, such a crucial free agency, and it's like, what do you perceive free agency to be if they don't get Dolman, because he's pretty much the main name that is associated
Mhm.
with the 49ers. We're hearing the reports that, the clearly aggressive Chicago Bears, who
The
have
Bears
traded
have
for two,
they've loaded up their offensive line. My God.
it's like they're being run by me or something. I don't know what it is, but that they have a they're determined to protect their quarterback.
Yeah.
And so if they go and get Dolman, um, I think that presents some challenges for 49er fans, because I don't know if they know where to turn beyond that. Like, what do you think are some potential? Do you have any other potential targets that they could look at on offensive line, or
Yeah.
is it Barch at center, drafting one of those tackles, or a guard? In the draft, how do you think they approach that?
I think the obvious name that's out there for free agency that's behind that is Ryan Kelly. And that would be somebody that would be really cool, to bring in, for the 49ers. But also, I in the back of my mind, the Matt Hennessy thing being there and plucking him off the practice squad, I have a feeling that he's going to have to be in the mix here. And we love Dahlman, right? We all want Dahlman, obviously son of a 49er. Once you're a son of a 49er, every 49er fan
Oh,
wants you,
it's
right? Like, I think
wraps.
that's
You're
it's a
bound to be a
yeah.
49er.
Yeah, he's such a Niner. But let's not forget Dahlman replaced Matt Hennessy in Atlanta. And Hennessy was far from bad. It just was he got injured. So I think he's going to be in the mix, but Ryan Kelly's the obvious name that you have out there in free agency. I don't think he would cost as much as Dahlman, but Dahlman, we kind of knew he was going to have a market. We just kind of hoped that it would just be a little less quiet, but the Bears are all in, right? You trade for Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney, and then you're after Dahlman. Man, you're really, really, really getting into the weeds here. And I think again, it's Ben Johnson being there and understanding, hey, we're gonna get our guy all the help, and we're gonna make sure we can evaluate him with everything that he can. So I think Ryan Kelly's your name. I think Matt Hennessy is somebody that you should keep an eye on. And I'm sure the 49ers will exhaust every possibility in the draft. Who? I don't know. I think your man Zabel is for the streets. You know how I say, when I say like for the streets, right? And the same thing with Armand Membo. Like, he's for the streets now. Like, he's not going to be there at 11. I think he's completely pushed his stock all the way up into the top 7, especially after that combine performance. Um, so yeah, there's a few possibilities, but Ryan Kelly's the one that jumps out to you at free agency, and then you'll always have the in-house. I'll tell you this: I would be really, really sad if the 49ers ran it back with Jake Brendel one more year. And not to say anything bad about him, because obviously, the 49ers were a few plays away from winning the Super Bowl with him there. So it wasn't so bad, but I think it's time for an upgrade. And center is so vital in this scheme. And the 49ers have shown that they'll throw money at people. They threw money at Weston Richburg right away when they were able to get their hands on Alex Mack, who they got for one more year. Look how well that offense ran. I would be very sad if Jake Brendel was just they're like, hey, run it back, and I'll be like, man, really? Like, again? Like, because every season has gone like this, down, 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 down. And I think it's time for an upgrade at center, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it happening in training camp. I just think they ran out of viable options. What was crazy about training camp was they were playing with the idea of Zakello at center or
Mhm,
Barch at center after Feliciano went down with the injury. At first, it was
mhm.
Feliciano rotating with Brendel. Brendel, you could see the struggles happening in training camp. And so I'm like, so I talked about it all the time. I was like, competition alert at center. Like, there might be um, a change here, but the guy who I think would have made the most sense to take over got hurt, which was Feliciano. And then Barch actually really didn't have that good of a training camp. And I just don't think they trusted Zakel enough at that point. And so they just wrote it out with Brendel. But I agree. I mean, Brendel was a great story, journeyman, undrafted free agent, career backup, finally gets the opportunity to start, earns a contract, Pro Bowl alternate, like great story, all beyond the age of 30. But as we all know, you know, time comes for everyone in this league, and you have to be able to see it when it's happening. And we saw it happening in training camp, and then we saw it progress into the season. Same goes for Banks and Brendel. They both struggled in training camp, and it just rolled into the season. So I agree. I think that they have to go somewhere else. Um, Barch for me, I think, is an intriguing option at either guard or center. I think if he were to play center, he brings more power than the 49ers have had at that position, where Brendel's more finesse. He's going to try to, I think one of Brendel's best attributes is getting to second level and being able to cut off backers. But he really struggles going east-west with an outside shade because he'll just get blown off the ball. It creates penetration, blows up the play. And I think that's something that we saw far too often in the run game with him. So if you put Barch there, I think he's more stout in the run game, which can hold the line of scrimmage. He still has the ability to get to second level, but they do have some flexibility. A guy that I'm intrigued by in free agency if they don't land on Dolman is James Daniels, former Iowa kid. He's still relatively young and fits his own scheme. I think he's athletic, and I think he could also kind of be plug and play at guard or center. So might not be a popular name, but I think he would fit what the 49ers are looking for. But at the end of the day, they have to address the offensive line at some point. They have to get younger at some point. They started with Dominic Pooney. It's a great start. Let's not forget Colton McKivitz, I believe, is 29 years old. Brendel in his 30s. Banks isn't going to be here. And Trent Williams is, 36, 37. So they have to address the position. Last year would have been a great year to somehow come away with a tackle. Obviously, it didn't happen that way because they were picking at 31. Now that they are picking early, now it's just kind of like, oh, where do we go? Do we go D line? Do we go O line? Like back, bringing it all the way back to your point about cornerback. I've gone through that process of like, regardless of who the player is, doesn't make sense to take a cornerback. And I do think you can. I've sold myself on the idea of having a cornerback taken at 11 because of all the things that you've mentioned. If you get one of the top cornerbacks in this class and you plug him in as a cost-controlled rookie with Demo and Renardo, and then you have Malik, and then you go and get a safety in the second or third round, or you bring in a safety in free agency, all of a sudden – we're talking about the best secondary we've seen on the San Francisco 49ers, and I can't even remember how long. Mm-hmm. And, then that allows you to maybe go for different types of guys, maybe a Aeneas Peebles at defensive tackle as kind of a pass rusher. You can still piece together a defensive line, kind of like
I like
you mentioned.
Sanders.
I love TJ Sanders.
TJ Sanders is a good one.
To me, he's a 3 down. He can do it all. So guys like that could definitely fit, might be available in the second round, but there are options at defensive tackle, whether they want to go with big bodies like Deion Walker or Cameron Jordan. They could go with more DJ Jones style defensive tackles and Omar Norman Lott. You can really pick your poison of what you want on defensive tackle, even at edge as well. Big fan of David Walker and Femi Oladejo. Those two guys probably going to be mid-round prospects that are, I would call them high upside players. So it's going to be interesting to see where they land. But the 49ers could theoretically draft cornerback or safety if they really want to go. If Nick Imanwari really upped his stock to 11, I don't know. I don't know if he's at 11.
Yeah, I don't think
Uh,
he's there yet.
he's probably got himself into the first, but I don't
Yes.
know if he's top 15
No,
yet.
that's a trade back candidate.
Yes. He's a freak though.
Yes.
Like from a athletic testing standpoint, how big he is, like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe how well he tested. And
Yeah.
he's like 6'3". It's crazy.
Do you think that he's a little bit more of a candidate to play down closer to the box as a linebacker, more than a safety? Like, is that what he's kind of destined to do as well too? Because I mean, yes, testing well and everything, that's great, straight line speed, all that stuff, and he definitely upped his stock. I think he's a prime trade back candidate at 11. You don't really feel comfortable with him at 11. But if you trade back and you're able to recoup some picks, it allows you to take more shots on the back end. But I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with him just right away being a free safety. I think you would have to try to play him in a sort of hybrid role, a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage as a little bit of a linebacker. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done the work on him enough to be able to have like a strong opinion on it, but I could totally see based on some of the clips that I've seen of him and kind of he seems like a throwback safety, which would
Hmm.
now be considered an in the box safety. So
Hmm.
um, the 49ers, do you think if how are they going to attack the safety position with Talanoa Funga likely leaving?
Hmm.
Because Malik, he's like an in the box safety, right? So
Hmm.
do you want to get a guy on the back end that would have more coverage ability?
Yeah, I think that's really where it would go. I just wonder, if the 49ers feel like, yes, we need to take a safety because they did the same thing with Malik Mustafa, and I think that's a clear indication of them going with players that are on their board that are higher. And I think that's the discussion about pick 11 is the Will Johnson pick. It feels like more of a best player available, like than need, right? Like, how can you pass on someone that's there, even if corner isn't like a pressing need? Because you'd be fine rolling with Lenore and Green next season. You'd be fine with that, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It
Right.
would almost just like overly stock it. But I wonder if maybe, with the tutelage of Gus Bradley, guru of the cover three, Legion of Boom stuff, and Robert Saleh, if the 49ers give Tig one more look, at least in training camp, and give him a shot to try to clean up some of the things, because I do think there is a school of thought that Nick Sorensen didn't exactly put him in positions to win. He's obviously got some flaws to his game that he needs to clean up on his own. Who knows if he can? But I wonder if the 49ers will take somebody, which I think they will. They'll definitely get a safety, but they'll still give him a look because they were invested in him. They were very happy, drafting him as well too. So I don't know. It's going to be a little bit of a competition, but I wouldn't necessarily just throw Tig out right away. I think with the idea that now the scheme is going to be much more refined. Robert Saleh is going to be able to put him in good spots, and Gus Bradley is like the little last tweaks of everything because, again, architect of the Legion of Boom stuff and the cover three stuff. I still think that he's firmly in the mix as well too. So yeah, the 49ers are definitely going to bring somebody in. You wonder if they'll do it in free agency. A name that people are throwing out again is Justin Reed, but he's going to get paid. And how do you pay him and cost control and all those things that you've been talking about, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how the 49ers spend in free agency, because what moves can you make that would directly contradict the message that you've been kind of putting out like these last few weeks with what you've been doing, obviously publicly with what you've been saying and the way that you've been moving with the cap as well too. But yeah, I fully expect them to bring in somebody as safety, but I do think it'll be much more of a competition than people are ready to believe.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it, and I'm also not giving up on Tig either. I think there's heading into year three. I think both of us expected him to take a much bigger step forward
For sure.
than he did. The way that when I watch Tig, it just feels like he's thinking too much. Like
Yeah, a little bit. And that was never him at Penn State either. Like he was just
Right.
a go, reactionary guy, ball hawk, always around the ball. It just felt like for whatever reason, again, I'm not absolving the player from the season that he had, right? Like you're not going to sit here and just tell me it was all Nick Sorensen and the defensive scheme that had him out of sorts. He has things that he needs to clean up as well too in terms of tackling angles, and it always seems like he's either over pursuing or he's got these things that he needs to fix. I just wonder if the 49ers have confidence in Robert Saleh and Gus Bradley to refine those things with the scheme and try to get the best out of him. I do think he's going to be in the competition, but you can't take away what the player was struggling with last year as well too. It's very easy to throw it at the feet of the defensive coordinator because the defense underperformed, but you still have to look at the player who needs to clean up these flaws that he had.
I think the skill set is still there. I just think
For
he was
sure.
out of position a lot, and that could be mental, right? So if you can fix the mental things, you start playing faster, you start moving more fluidly, and so maybe that's just it. So I'm not. We at least know he's there, and he's probably going to be slated for a backup role right now with the opportunity to compete. But it'll be interesting to see how they handle that position. Another position that I think we probably don't talk about too much, but is a bit of an inside joke amongst 49er fans, that that running back room. Are the 49ers going to be taking it's funny how it plays out, because if the 49ers are going to take a running back, third round might be the sweet spot for a running back in this one.
Yes, they are. And here's
They
why.
are. I think they are
Yeah,
too.
yes, they are. And here's why. You can't talk about getting younger. You can't talk about resetting if you're not going to continue to invest in the position, right? For whatever reason, the 49ers don't love Jordan Mason as much as we do. For whatever reason.
That's true.
And there's
At
still,
least it feels that way.
yeah, it definitely does. Because no matter what, when Christian McCaffrey came back, they were like, you're like top 5 in the league in rushing yards. Sit your ass down. Like you're not even going to touch the ball or see the field. I think the 49ers are definitely intent on trying to move Jordan Mason. And a team that comes to mind right off the rip is Dallas. Dallas send a 5th-round pick, which is an absolute win when you have an undrafted free agent. Dallas sends a 5th-round pick. Cool, you take it, you flip it for Mason. But yeah, the 49ers are absolutely going to take a running back. And you know what? I've got a name in mind. Bring me Trevor Etienne. Here's why.
Oh yeah?
Oh, yeah. Here's why. Silky smooth, no tread on the tires. Pass, you can run your offense the same exact way that you can with Christian McCaffrey on the field. And he just reminds me of like an Alvin Kamara type that's going to come out and all of a sudden just be as efficient as he is on the ground, catching the football and kind of catching everybody off guard. When you look at Georgia, he didn't necessarily have to be a bell cow, and that's good. You don't want your running back to have a lot of tread on the tire. But also, the problem is that when Jordan Mason's on the field, you can automatically take away running back screens, take them out. Like, you're not going to throw the ball to Jordan Mason, very rarely will you. Etienne gives you that flexibility to kind of run the offense the same way that you would with Christian McCaffrey on the field. And I do believe that this is one of the better running back classes, right, in a while, actually. So while we
Yep.
make jokes about 3rd-round running back, the 49ers certainly are going to draft another running back. And I would be comfortable with a room of Christian McCaffrey, Isaac Guerrero, and Trevor Etienne. And I would feel good about that. If you're talking about resetting the cap and getting younger, then you have to do it with the running back position, and you have to keep flipping these running backs and moving them before they become expensive. Christian McCaffrey is somebody that is vital to this offense, clearly. But he's not going to be around forever.
Yeah.
So it's got to be something that you're thinking with a little bit of foresight, with the idea that he can still impact right away. I think Trevor Etienne is the pick, and that's the guy that I would love for them to draft.
Yeah, no, he was good at the Senior Bowl. I thought he showed his ability to run routes and things like that. Um, it's like where's that sweet spot, because it does seem like the popular name amongst 49er fans is Cam Scatterbo. He's probably 2nd-round pick, and I don't know. See, I have a hard time with it.
Too high.
I love the idea of him on the team. Don't know if I love the idea of him in the 2nd round
Too high.
over the defensive lineman that will be there, over
Landon
the.
Jackson will be there. Landon Jackson will be there in the second round that you could get from Arkansas. It's just too high. That is too high right there.
There's
If
a
you
lot
guys are
of
losing
guys.
your mind over a third round running back, imagine in the second round, especially when it's super deep like this. Come on.
Yeah, so I agree. I don't think reaching is the way to go. But it will be interesting to see how they attack this for sure. An underrated guy that I really like is Marcus Yarns out of Delaware.
You've been on
He's
that.
definitely a little bit smaller. I don't look at him as like a 3-down back, but he has, to me, the ability to run within in between the tackles, do it in the pass game, do it all. He's definitely doesn't have the big game uh pedigree like Trevor Etienne, and Etienne is definitely a little thicker than Marcus Yarns, but there's definitely a couple names out there. Even Brashard Smith out of SMU is intriguing to me. If you want to go with a thumper, Ollie Gordon, for whatever reason, his stock fell off a
It did.
cliff. It's probably because he's not a super dynamic back. He's more of just, I'm going to run through your face back, but his power was on full display at the Senior Bowl, to the point where he had a couple runs where I was like, oh my gosh, I feel bad for that safety, because he literally just dropped his shoulder and ran him over. So you can get whatever you want. I just took I don't know how to say his first name, Bishal Tootin, the Virginia Tech running back, in my mock draft 3.0. He's insanely fast. Smaller, it's 5'9", but he has that ability to, fit into a outside zone scheme, has the vision, has the patience, has the burst, and then he can even run power schemes too. So you can pick and choose where you want to go in this draft at running back. You just got to pick what round you want to take them. So it's a good one to take a running back. But I don't know. It might be time, Jason, to dive into a position that we typically don't like to talk about in the offseason, at least as of late. It's a quarterback position. Mr. Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of stuff. Whether you believe it or not, there's a lot of smoke. There's a reason why we call it smoke season. And more often than not, in my time at least covering the San Francisco 49ers, smoke tends to lead to fire. And what do you make of the smoke surrounding Brock Purdy as it currently stands in regards to the contract negotiation?
It's just beginning. This is something that's going to play out in the media. It seems like a lot of people are carrying water for the 49ers right now, particularly Adam Schefter, who continues to beat this drum about, the amount of money, right? I don't think that the first offer is indicative of anywhere near where the 49ers want to go. And if you look at the way that negotiations have gone, I've said it a million times, right? Like, they call George Kittle's negotiation a bloodbath. So we're just getting started, I think, more than anything. We're really just getting started. What?
What did you say? They called it a bloodbath? Like
they called it a bloodbath? Yeah.
The one now or the
no, the last one. The last one. When it was a bloodbath, right?
Over 3 mil.
Right. The issue is this. The 49ers are sick of losing the deals. Right? They're more concerned with looking like they won the deal or won the negotiation, and they're 0 for 2 with the last two because they caved to Bosa and they caved to Aiyuk. And I hate that it had to be Brock, but now is when they're like, we're not losing this one. And the leverage that they have is, you're under contract, we'll tag you, and we'll tag you again. And Adam Schefter talked about it. $5 million this year. The tag is whatever it is, 40 for the next year. And then it goes up to 50. That's still less than $100 million. What's Brock going to want in a contract extension? Probably around the same thing off the rip if he signs it today. So I hate that it had to be Brock, but now the 49ers are already just saying, you know what? We're not going to lose this deal. This is the one that we're going to dig in on. And to do it to the quarterback position is a little bit flabbergasting. It really is. It really is. Because, all right, with the
Are you
Brandon Aiyuk thing,
surprised?
I am. I very much am. I'm very surprised. With Aiyuk, the way that the 49ers were valuing Aiyuk was, we like you. We like you a lot. And Brock Purdy's not going to hold out, by the way. It's not going to happen. He's just not in the business of doing that. It's not going to happen. So just let's. I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, because what? All right. So holding out, you don't get an extra year on the contract. It just you're back in the same spot.
No, right. No, it's more so I think where I think the holdout happens is OTA, mandatory minicamp.
Mhm.
That's like the initial threat, right? Like we're not going to show up to this. And then that puts the real threat on training camp. Because remember, Brock Purdy was talking to the media during his exit interview, and he specifically outlined wanting to get this done by mandatory minicamp and OTAs because that's when our year starts. We need to get in, start getting acclimated with the new players on the team, be able to implement new schemes, being able to throw with my guys, build that rhythm and start that rhythm there. Not in training camp, right?
So what I mean is, I still think this gets done regardless. Like, I'm not saying that it doesn't get done. I'm just saying the 49ers are going to dig in here and it's going to get uglier than it gets better. I really just don't see why Brock would do that in turn. And I don't think the 49ers will let it get there one way or another. But back to what I was saying, like really about Aiyuk.
Mm-hmm.
When Brandon Aiyuk was looking around and he said, Jalen Waddle's getting this amount of money, Devonta Smith's getting this amount of money. I just did something that was very historic on efficiency. And if you give me some more targets, I can do better. And the 49ers said, but we're not going to give you more targets. We don't run our offense through you. $30 million receivers get 160 to 170 targets like Justin Jefferson, like Jamar Chase. And we're not going to run our offense through you. So why do we pay you for that amount? Right? Now, they cave on that deal, and then they give him that. And now they are trying to right the wrongs of past negotiations, and they're playing around with the wrong position to do that with.
Right.
Because it's quarterback.
Yeah.
I still think whatever it is that was reported, that $45 million deal, they'll meet in the middle. They'll get there. They say they're far apart. What's far apart? Far apart in your eyes is, maybe in our eyes is $10 to $15 million. Maybe far apart is $5 to $7 million. They'll get there. And then the other thing is, and I forget who I discussed it with, the 49ers still have many moves to make to clear more cap space. A Kittle extension opens up more cap space. A Fred Warner restructure opens up more cap space. Maybe you redo Nick Bosa's deal, opens up more cap space. But I don't think they want to do that off the rip before free agency right there and try to use that way. Like, I think that's a last ditch thing kind of to kind of fix around with the cap. So for me, I just think this is the beginning, and it's going to play out in the media like it always does, but eventually they'll get there. They'll definitely get there. But I don't really care what they meet at. I don't really care what the amount of money is. I think I'm with you. The timeline has to be mandatory minicamp. Let's get this rolling. Let's not mess around, right? Let's get the guys in here that are going to be there day one, week one. Let's roll, and let's start to get this going. But it does seem like the 49ers are going to play as hard as they can with Brock Purdy, and I just think it's silly to do it with the quarterback. That's kind of strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to that extent. It's I guess I try to look at it like this way, right? Because I think when you start talking about contract negotiations, it's really easy to put your fan hat on and be like, we want to get the lowest possible amount for X player, right? Because that means the team won the negotiation, and then that means me as a fan has also won the negotiation because we got him for a steal. Like, right? When we see those contracts come through, what do, Jason? We come onto this channel or our channels and we say the San Francisco 49ers just came through with a clutch steal of a deal. What a great move. For me, it was, wow, the San Francisco 49ers just traded a second, third, and fourth and a future fifth for Christian McCaffrey. What a steal. Other people didn't feel that way, but that's how I felt. I felt like they got a great value on that trade, and that's how we talk about it. So fans are always going to angle for the value. But if we're going to talk about this as contract extensions should be talked about, if we are going to pretend like we have a seat at that table, it is important to talk about there are other elements even outside of just Brock and the team. Like the NFLPA would probably get involved if Brock Purdy signed a $45 million contract.
Yeah, they would say, what are you doing?
They would say, we need to get on an emergency call right now just because you just set the quarterback market back. Years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think fans, I don't expect them to, but it is also important to be able to recognize that is a part of the conversation. And so when you see 45, I see fans who are like, oh, that's a great deal. Like, take it, accept it. Like, that's perfect. And, if I'm a fan too, absolutely. If we get Brock Purdy for $45 million per year, the Kirk Cousins deal, that's great. But it's not great for other reasons. And even outside of the 49ers and Brock. And I think that's the other thing. It's like, they're going to be outside circumstances weighing in on this contract, because if Brock takes significantly under market value, it jacks up the market. Just like, the NFLPA doesn't have a problem when you go above market value, Trent Baalke, but when you go below, it creates issues. And I think that's kind of where we're at. Like, I don't think 45 is the number.
No.
It very well could be the starting point. I don't think it's the finish point. But what it kind of signals to me is like, oh, this could be a very tumultuous negotiation, as they have been with Kittle, Bosa, Deebo, Aiyuk, Warner. All the blue chip leaders of your franchise have all had very difficult negotiations. Why is that any different for Brock? It's just a tough spot to be in, because it's the quarterback and he's supposed to be the leader of your team.
And what's funny is the reason the market has gotten here is because no team has taken a stance with the position. Now, let me explain. Tua Tagovailoa, we like you, but I don't like you enough to give you $55 million. But you know what? You're scared of the unknown of not having a quarterback, so you dish that out.
Yep.
Do you think Dak Prescott's worth $60 million a year? Absolutely not. But Dallas is scared of the unknown. It's going to take a team to be so brave, stand up, and say, you know what? No, you're not worth $55 million. And I'm not saying this is the 49ers with Brock. I'm talking about all the other contracts that Brock should rightfully compare to his own situation. Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Tua, Dak Prescott, right? But it's going to take a brave organization to stand up when one of these guys walks in and they say, I want what he's getting. No. And you know what? Try to go find it somewhere else. We will reset the position because we don't feel you're worth it. Paying quarterbacks because you're afraid of the unknown is why we're in the position we are and why the market has exploded. Because you're afraid of what it looks like. You have a person that has operated your offense at an efficient level like Tua. and you start to think about what happens if he's not here. But that shouldn't change the way that you value Tua just because it may get a little bumpy while he's not here. And that's kind of where we're at. But it is going to take one brave organization to say, no, we don't look at you like that. And we don't think you're like that. So move on. Right? And that's the reason that we're in this situation. And Brock has every right to look at Trevor, Tua, Goff, all those guys that got all that money and say, I've been to 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl. Right. I had one. I was top 4 in MVP voting. None of those guys have ever been any of that. I beat Dak Prescott. I beat Dak multiple times. I've beaten Dak Prescott. Yeah, I've beaten Dak Prescott. I beat Jared Goff. I beat Tua Tagovailoa in my first start. Like, when I got thrown into the fire against Miami, I beat Tua. He has every right to say, yeah. He has every right to say all that. Every right. But the problem is, because the market has gotten there, the number is something that Brock should chase. And Brock, if I'm him, I don't take a cent under it. Unless you really, really, really care about the team. But again, NFLPA is going to get involved because it's going to ruin everything for everybody else. And that's where it is. The organization is going to take one organization to say no. And go find your money somewhere else. Let's see if someone else believes in you like that, because we don't. And I don't know who it's going to be. And I don't think it's going to be the 49ers, but it's got to be someone if we're going to stop this.
I think it's really well said. And I think that, let's say, I'm going to speak in hypothetical terms. Let's say the 49ers are lowballing him. That fits the fan narrative. Oh, you're going to get a lot of fans on that side of, oh, well, yeah, pay him at least amount as possible, but not the players coalition, not the other quarterbacks who are in negotiations or coming up behind him, and the other agents. Could you imagine what the agent conversation would be like? I talked to Patrick Mahomes' agent. Steinberg, Jerry Maguire, the guy they made the Jerry Maguire movie about. Interviewed him, asked him directly about the Brock Purdy contract negotiation.
Does he look like Tom Cruise?
Not at all.
So why would you cast him? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just,
But just basically, it's a really simple logic. You take the resume and you compare it to who's been paid, and then you slot it. That's it. That's what you do.
Correct.
He was even saying, like, Brock might not be, the top, quarterback in this league, like a Mahomes, like a Josh Allen, like we always talk about, but he's done a lot for your franchise and he's won you a lot of games. And that is really hard to do. And you talked about a team that's brave enough to say no and put their foot down. Well, it's like, if that is the 49ers, it has taken the San Francisco 49ers since Jeff Garcia to find a potential long-term solution at the quarterback position, and have just gassed out after gassed out on potential options. Colin Kaepernick, Alex Smith, the list goes on and on. Jimmy Garoppolo, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, like everyone who's come through those doors, just it hasn't worked out. And it's like I don't envy either side. I don't envy the 49ers. I don't envy Brock in his representation, because I've said that I've anticipated this was going to be a difficult negotiation the whole time. And what the overarching theory was amongst the fans, right, Jason? It was like, oh, it's Brock. We're going to pay him. We're going to wrap this thing up. Kumbaya. Head into, free agency and the draft, and we're going to have Brock locked up. And it's just like, I don't think that's the case. And I think what Adam Schefter is saying is probably damn near the playbook right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's saying it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I guess the one thing that we can say that is at least good is that Brock's not going to run the social media.
Yes.
So
Brock's going to handle this with class. There's not going to be a word.
And behind the scenes, right?
Yes.
Like
very classy about this.
We're never going to find out how tense and contentious it got until it's done.
Right.
We're not going to find out during. Right? We're gonna see this play out a little bit through the media. And the problem is that the 49ers are negotiating through the media by telling Adam Schefter, hey, we don't got money. It's like they're throwing all these things out there as excuses as to why they're coming in with the amount of money that they're coming in with. Like, hey, we're cost cutting. Hey, we're trying to reset our cap situation, and I don't know, $45 million. Like Schefter is carrying their water right now, and he's doing their bidding, right? That's how you keep relationships. That's how you keep your inside sources. You do us a little favor, we'll keep you in the know. We'll keep you in the loop. When there's a signing, we'll let you know first. We'll give it to you, not rep. So, yeah, this is going to play out in the media. But the good news is Brock's not going to run the social media. Brock's not going to make a stink. Brock's not going to send a tweet that is annoying or or anything like that. Like, that's not going to happen. That's good. And I think we saw the same thing kind of with Kittle. Kittle wasn't doing that. Fred didn't do that, but that got contentious. And I am willing to bet that this is amongst, if not the most contentious negotiation that this regime has been through. But it's just strange that it happens around the most important position, right? Like I just, that's the part where they're kind of losing me a little bit here. It's like, you want to mess around with the quarterback? And I guess the way fans are going to interpret it is they don't believe in him. I don't think that's that. I don't think that's that either. I think the 49ers want him back at their price, and Brock is trying to get what he feels he deserves. And every team wants a player back at their price, just not the 49ers. And every player wants what they feel like they rightfully deserve. So we're going to find out. They'll meet in the middle. I'm sure they get this done, but this is far from over, and it's just beginning more than anything.
Yeah, it's a fascinating process. And Jason, there's twists and turns in every one of these contract negotiations, and it's going to be interesting to see if something unexpected happens, and I think that's what I've learned over the years of covering the 49ers, especially during this time frame, is it probably suits you to just condition yourself to recognize there are multiple ranges of outcomes other than just him getting paid and everything's fine. And it actually kind of insulates your mentals a little bit to be able to manage just how hard, these negotiations are. And it's like, at a certain point, it's like, I don't know enough about the 49ers insides to know, like, there's a method to the madness, right? But, I'm sure there's a lot of it on the outside where it's like, well, why?
I'm just laughing at the comment of, like, in 3 weeks, Brock is wearing blue. He's a cowboy, but I think that's hilarious because
that's where we're headed.
Right.
For sure.
It is, because Brandon Aiyuk posts a rap lyric and they're like, oh my God, he's a Steeler. I'm like, what on earth has that literally, like, I'll never forget where I was when that first happened. I was literally potting with Steph, and they put it up on the wall, and I'm like, if you ain't even worth $100 million, you shouldn't be in the city, and I ain't got that thing. I'm like, dude, I was like, that's a rap lyric. I was like, that has literally nothing at all to do with football, guys. Like, please unplug a little. But yeah,
it was the timing of it.
It is, yeah, of course, and it is kind of funny, like, like that's where we're at, right? Like, Brock was spotted in Texas. He's like again, we're gonna find all this stuff coming out, and again, that's why it's good for 49er fans to kind of not unplug, because we need you guys to be tapped in. Like, we create content, we need you to be tapped in, but you got to know what is what and what is nothing.
I would say,
right?
Just open your mind. Don't be closed-minded to one potential outcome. That's how you get burnt. You have to be a ranges of outcome person
100%.
when you're a fan of the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, yeah. And expect the unexpected.
You have to have a range of outcomes, and you have to understand what they are, and then you decide how much you wanna put your emotional well-being into each one of those baskets so you can handle it when something happens that you weren't anticipating.
Here's the watch. What you set it to is chaos.
Yes.
That's it right there.
Dude, I tweeted about it the other day. It's like this is what I've been full-time covering the Niners since 2021. And we've gone through so many crazy things with this team, even just since 2021, that it's like
nothing should shock you.
Yeah, I'm not shocked by anything. Like, in fact, I think some fans look at me like I'm jaded a little bit, but I'm like, I'm almost expecting the crazy thing to be the norm during the off season. So I'm ready to go. Like, if something happens, like if something crazy happens, it might impact me a little bit as a fan of the team, but as someone who covers the team, I'm ready to go. Let's see what happens.
What's dead may never die. You can't kill something that's like I'm dead on the inside, right? Like all of it.
I've been dead since the Harbaugh years, man.
Yeah, look, man. Nothing would shock me at all. Anyway, Brad, I got to get up out of here in a little bit. But I think did we get a super chat? Did we get to it?
Let's get the one super chat and we'll get out of here. James says, I think we were talking about the draft. I think he's talking about Malachi Starks. Not good combine, but his tape is good. I think this was probably I apologize, James. I completely whiffed on this one. I like to time up the super chats with what we're talking about. So that's my bad. But Malachi Starks, he's a guy that I haven't watched yet. But I've heard good things. He's the Georgia safety, right?
Yes. I think it's important for people to understand that 40 time and combine is not play speed.
No.
And someone that it really kind of clicked for me was a little bit right, because I'm of the opinion that the guys that are solidified, they don't need the combine. That's why you don't see guys going to the combine, because when you go there, the only thing you can really do is harm your stock, not boost it. The combine is really for the tweeners, the guys that have to boost their stock a little bit, right? And have to move up a little bit, right? But with Starks, the tape definitely is better than the combine. And there's been plenty of combine warriors who the tape is bad. Let's put it like this. Shamar Stewart destroyed the combine. I mean, these numbers, the RAS score is insane.
Right.
He has 4.5 sacks over his entire college career. The tape doesn't match the combine. With Starks, the tape is better than the combine. Tez Johnson weighed in at 153 pounds, and he ran like he had a refrigerator on his back. But the tape doesn't show that. The tape shows a silky smooth guy who knows how to get himself open with route running. So it's good and bad. It's a little of column A and a little of column B. But the combine has now been a place where your track record of tape now no longer matters because you didn't test well at the combine. And how many guys didn't test well at the combine that have turned into absolute studs? There's no measurement.
Favorite players.
There's no measurement for a football player. And I know that's a really like broad term, but Malachi Starks is a football player. So I'm not worried about the combine.
Yeah. Like that's why Jack Betch is one of my favorite players in this class.
Jack Beck is a stud.
He's not going to wow you at all from a measurable standpoint, from a speed standpoint. He's got pretty good routes, but it's phenomenal. He's just a football player. He's a baller.
Jack Beck is this year's Puka Nacua.
Ooh.
You know when it really I put it out there. You know when it really locked in for me? I had heard Then I watched the Senior Bowl and I watched the tape. They gave us the tape finally for the one-on-ones. And then I heard him say there's no such thing as a 50-50 ball with me. It's 80-20. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, there. I was like, oh, yeah, there it is. I was like, that's what I'm talking about right there. But there's talk, and then there's talk with the tape in which you see all of that with the contested catches. Jack Beck is this year's Puka Nacua. How we're going to see where he gets drafted, and he ends up in the 4th or 5th round, and we're like, what on earth did anybody not see? And he's a stud. He's one of my favorite receivers in this class.
His measurables wouldn't have him, or production would have him as a second rounder, but I think he's a second round talent. Like, I think that's where I think he should go. Yep. I've been saying it for a while now. It's not a comp, but he reminds me of Anquan Bolden. Like,
I like it.
That's the vibe I get from him. And Anquan Bolden is one of my favorite players. When he didn't like the combine either. When he was on Arizona. Wasn't even by the time he was a 49er. I just respected Anquan Bolden's game so much, and I see that in Jack. And again, like, people keep talking to me about Savion Williams, and I'm like, guys, the first game I covered last year of college football was Stanford versus TCU, and Savion had the most frustrating, not one, not two, but like 3 to 4 just. How did you drop that?
Stone hands.
Yeah. And I'm just like, and guess who was the best player on the field? Not the other potential first to second round wide receiver prospect on Stanford either. It was Jack. And I thought Jack was a tight end. I was talking to my buddy Taylor. I was like, Taylor, dude, they got this tight end who's sick. Jack Beck. And he's like, he's a wide receiver. I was like, I thought he was a tight end, but he's dope.
There's no measurement for football players. Right. And when you watch the tape, it's all over it. He's a football player. And I think he's going to be the guy that falls so far that we're just like, how did you let that happen? And I think everybody in the league right now is like, damn, why didn't we draft Puka Nacua?
He should be a second round pick, in my opinion. But anyways, I don't think he will either. Tommy says trade Brock to the Browns or Giants for their first.
I don't think they do that.
You would have to trade him to the Titans, because you would have
for the number 1 pick.
You'd have to get Cam Ward or Jackson Dart. You know, Kyle Shanahan wouldn't touch Shedeur Sanders with a 4,000-foot pole.
Well, with Shedeur, you're not only getting him, you're getting his father.
Well, I don't think that's a problem. I think I think it's play style.
Well, I'll say this. Shedeur's game is all the short area stuff, right? Like his arm isn't
around the line of scrimmage.
So, and Tony's on the right path. And I tweeted this. Someone's gonna have to stop Kyle Shanahan from drafting Curtis Rourke from Indiana. Like, they're gonna
I came across him, and I haven't watched his tape yet, but he has some interesting PFF grades, and I was like,
they're literally gonna have to hold Kyle Shanahan back from drafting Curtis Rourke. Tony's and I literally tweeted that as well too. But
he's definitely drafting a quarterback somewhere.
Oh yeah, 100%. But to this point, I don't think the Browns would move like for him or anything like that. The Giants wouldn't either. The Giants were all in on Stafford. They offered him more money. He just decided to go home. Go back home. The Browns. They just cleared up all that cap space for Deshaun Watson. I think that if I was guessing today who their starting quarterback would be, now that he has two torn Achilles, probably Kirk Cousins. They'll find a way to make that work as well to get him over there. But yeah, I don't think it's possible, right? Like, I think the 49ers, maybe they would entertain the idea of getting to 1, 2, or 3, but it takes 2 to tango, and I doubt either of those teams would. Any of those teams would be like, yeah, you know what? We'll give up a top 3 pick for Brock Purdy. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Slick says Brock's coming into the negotiating meetings like, hey, blood, yesterday's price is not today's price.
I mean, look, he should just walk in with a chart. Man. He should walk in with a chart and show Tua makes this amount of money, I beat him. Goff makes this amount of money, I beat him. Dak makes this amount of money, I beat him. Hurts makes this amount of money, I beat him. Right? Like, he can go down that list and say, I've done what I've done in these games, right? And I've, so again, all that you can do is compare yourself to someone else's resume. And Brock has as good a case as it doesn't matter what you feel he's owed. If you're looking at what they've gotten paid and putting together the resume one against the other, then he's got as good a case as anybody.
Jason, we said we were trying to get
I
off
know.
in the
I got Peacock and Aponte at 8:00. But goodness,
they're dumping super chats on us. So you
Let's
have
go.
7 minutes. Strawberry
Let's do
says the number 1 overall pick is worth multiple firsts and multiple day 2 picks. If your quarterback is worth that in a trade, you pay him, you don't trade him. That is actually a phenomenal point.
Bars.
That's a phenomenal point. Like, I don't know if that's an original thought or maybe you heard that from someone else, but I might be borrowing that, Strawberry. That is fantastic. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. If they're going to say that, Brock Purdy is better than the best quarterback in this class, and we will take that guy and we'll give you the first round draft pick for Brock and pay him, right? Because that also will impact trade compensation. Yeah, that was a bar. That was a bar. All right. Going once, going twice. Any more super chats from here on out, we apologize because if you don't get them in the next 10 seconds, we won't read them. Maybe we will. We'll see. But yeah, no, I really do like that take. That's a good take.
That's a perfect way of looking at it.
And it sounds like Aponte's got a show rolling with Peacock right after this.
Correct.
So
yeah, it's going to be about like both. It'll be on both. It's going to be about, I love talking draft with you, and I love talking draft with Brian, especially with the shadow draft and everything as well too. But we're really going to talk about pick 11. Like, I think that's what the whole thing is about. It's just about pick 11 and what the 49ers possibilities will be there too. So you always want to be listening to Brian Peacock, because man, this guy, he's locked in, just like Brad is. Like I would put them, at the top of the content creator draft evaluators if we were going
Peacock,
with power rankings.
He's OG in these streets, as the kids say. He's been doing it longer than I have, and he's been doing it at a really high level.
Kickers.
So make sure you tap in Aponte, Peacock. You can go to either one of their channels. 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes. These guys really know how to like push my buttons, man.
They sure do, and they enjoy doing it. And appreciate everyone for tapping in. Make sure you are liked and subscribe to both channels. All that good stuff. Go tap in with Peacock and Aponte right after this. Appreciate you all. This is State of the Franchise. I am going to click the right outro. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.